Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Reaching Your Full Potential Online Tech Summit, where top experts share their secret tips to stand out from the crowd and be uber successful using technology. Today, I have Curt Anderson. A little bit bio about Curt. Curt Anderson founded an e-commerce company in 1995 that was ranked three times higher on the Internet Retailer magazine, top 1,000 e-commerce companies. Since selling that company, Curt has served as an e-commerce consultant targeting manufacturers. And now Curt is also the proud author of Stop Being the Best Kept Secret and founder of B2BTell.com, an e-commerce resource guide for manufacturers. Curt, thank you so much for joining. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, Shahid, man, thank you so much. I tell you, this is such an honor and privilege to join you today, and I'm very flattered and appreciative to be here. So I thank you for the intro, and as it summed up, I founded an e-commerce company in 1995, which means one thing and one thing only, just means I'm really old. And and I do have to say, I got into e-commerce in I had a wholesale business at that time, and I got into e-commerce basically out of sheer desperation. I was running out of ideas, and things weren't working so well. And all of a sudden, this little thing, e-commerce, came along, and it's been great. So it's been a fun ride. And so now I'm excited for this conversation. So that's kind of where I've been, if you will.
Perfect. No, that's good. Good. I'm glad you're on here with us today, because I guess what you have been in, obviously e-commerce, and especially in today's climate, that's very, very important. But we'll get to those a little bit more later on. But
Sure.
why don't you tell us a little bit about the journey that you had, specifically, maybe you can elaborate more about the e-commerce journey, how you had your success, and how you brought that online.
Sure. And and if this resonates with like with your folks at ECNet, you guys do an incredible job, with the websites and e-commerce that you do. When people are just starting out and just getting onto their e-commerce journey, it can be daunting, overwhelming, and it's just great when, they can fall back on someone like yourself. When I, again, I'm an older guy. So when I got into it 100 years ago, there was no Google, there was no social media. So it was just a lot of trial and error. If we wanted to do a workshop on all my mistakes and failures, that would, we would have a 3-day discussion. And, but I think the game changer back then was when Google really hit the scene. That was like 2001-ish, 2002, when it started becoming more of a household name. I think anybody in e-commerce, that was a game changer. And then, of course, when social media started becoming more prevalent, YouTube in 06 and Twitter around 06, LinkedIn 07. Those were just game changers. And I guess what I would share with people, again, regardless of where they are on their e-commerce journey, is just experiment, test. When social media came on the scene, Facebook 03 or whatever, our team, we were very eager to test out these new platforms. I never wanted to be beat by a competitor because I ignored these new platforms. And the great thing is they're all free. Every single one of them are free, and they're even still free today. Mm-hmm. And it takes time, and now there's advertising that goes with it. But I really encourage people to, take advantage. LinkedIn is that's how you and I connected. It's just such a great resource to learn, educate. People are doing programs like, I commend you for what you're doing to help people so they don't have to have the arrows in their back, kind of like they say pioneers had their arrows in their back. There's no reason to, you can take advantage of other people's mistakes, if you will. So.
No, that's definitely valuable for sure. So, you talked about how you started in 1995. That's pretty impressive. It sounds a long time ago, but obviously, a lot has changed, right? Obviously, from then till now, I guess if you just look at from the previous year, what today is, right? Things change so fast, drastically. Based on that, how did you kind of keep up with your growth and successes and failures based on that?
Yeah, great question. So what was interesting, I was in a transition period. So I had a wholesale business, and what was funny was when I went on in 1995, I was determined I was going to be a B2B play, which, and there wasn't a lot of B2B or B2C back then. It was just like this whole internet thing in e-commerce was new. And sure enough, back in the 90s, I was in my 20s. And so my generation in the 20s, Gen X, they were the ones that kept purchasing from the company. My intention was to sell it to business owners who at that time were probably in their 40s and 50s. and they weren't on the internet. They weren't on e-commerce. The
Mhm.
thought of like, I'm going to take out my credit card and punch it into a computer and buy something. What are you, crazy? Why would I do that when I could just go to Sears or Toys R Us or some other retail place that unfortunately, is not with us today. But so it was a totally different time,
Right.
going through that whole process. E-commerce, the great thing was our e-commerce company, we grew 17 straight years of double-digit growth.
Hmm.
And it was hard. It was hard and it was relentless. However, if you were just in the game, you experienced that growth. E-commerce in April of this year grew 49%. 49%. Just because that's where the consumers are, that's where customers are, that's where B2B buyers are. So I think just being in the game, this might sound broad or generic, and it was a relentless up and down. Trust me, it was a roller coaster. It wasn't easy, but the being in e-commerce in itself allowed that growth. And I'll end on this note. I just I did a webinar the other day, and I had a stat. E-commerce here in the United States of all retail sales is something like 14%.
Wow.
It's like 14%. So the thing is, even with that 49% in April, that 49% growth, it still only represents 14%. So though e-commerce has been around for about 20, almost 30 years now or so, it's still we're just in the baby stages of e-commerce. So again, any of your listeners that are like, oh, am I late to the game, or what, boy, I just encourage you, just get out there, team up with an expert like Shahid and his firm, and just kick the tires and just get in the e-commerce game.
No, definitely. Thank you for that. But you're 100%, that's an interesting stat. And based on that, especially in today's climate, right? How would you say that how important it is you kind of just elaborate a little bit more how important e-commerce is, but how do you kind of, how do you start selling online, and where do you start if someone were to kind of do this?
Just to get started, sure. Great question. So I'm very bullish on the marketplaces. When I say the marketplaces, obviously the gorilla is Amazon. I think, they're still 50% of all e-commerce sales. So, if a listener out there has a finished good, a proprietary product, or distributor, importer, manufacturer, definitely explore the marketplaces. You have Amazon. Alibaba is a great consideration. They are now new to North America, where before they were just strictly in China. They are new here. There's a lot of niche sites. If you're in electrical components, there's a company that has an online marketplace called DigiKey. Zorro is a huge marketplace. It's the e-commerce division of Grainger, which Grainger is a publicly traded company, multi-billion, $10 billion company. Zorro is, growing explosively. So marketplaces are a great place to start. Again, if somebody's just starting out, Etsy, eBay, Craigslist, you have the Facebook, Instagram, both have marketplaces. So if you're not ready to make the commitment to an e-commerce store, that's a great consideration. However, I'm an e-commerce guy, so I do feel you do need to have a presence. You buy your domain name, you contact Shahid, and he's going to work with you and put up that, you can get into a bare bone basic e-commerce store. I think you and I talked, if WordPress is 37% of all websites. I know you work with WordPress, you're a Shopify expert. If somebody wanted to just kind of tip their toe and just start gradually, you could do WordPress, add a plugin which is called WooCommerce, and you could get into the game relatively inexpensively to kick the tires. So hopefully if that covered that question.
No, that definitely helps a lot for sure, especially coming from someone who's been around for a long time and knows what the ins and outs are. Based on that as well, like, if you look at e-commerce, right? Obviously you have a store, that's great. Now, how do you get people to come on it? And this is probably one of the biggest challenges people have. So what would you say, what's the importance of pay-per-click ads, like such as Google, Facebook, and all these other platforms that exist?
No, fantastic question. And maybe, kind of timely throw a question back to you. One of the first things that I love to do and start with a company, and again, I'm heavier in the B2B space, is we love to go through the persona exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, I know people can be very skeptical. Sometimes I'll do a webinar and people, wait a minute, what is a persona exercise?
Mm-hmm.
So the persona exercise, and if I can just I wrote a book, and it's called Stop Being the Best Kept Secret. And in the book, I call it, when we're trying to target that ideal dream customer, I call them soulmates. Who's your soulmate? It's like basically your website it's a dating site, and we're trying to attract those ideal customers. I call them soulmates. And, however, how do we go out and get them? So in a B2B space, like you just mentioned, we have Google pay-per-click, SEO. I'm a huge proponent of Google Shopping. So if you don't mind, I want to throw just 2 quick questions back to you. How do you approach your clients with kind of like that persona exercise, if you will? And are you guys real active? What's your experience or what's your take on, like, I'm very strong and very bullish on Google Shopping. So 2 questions at you, kind of the persona and then Google Shopping.
So generally when people do come to us and we do it, we'll probably lean towards SEO, get their store optimized. And then depending on the budget that they have, we'll look at what their spending limits are. And if their spending limits is not that much, then we don't recommend Google ads or Facebook. Maybe Facebook ads, depends, right? But again, it's important I kind of identify what exactly they need to have on their site in terms of SEO, making sure the right keywords, right category description, all that stuff. Just like you mentioned, how you want people to come to how do you get attracted to the website? So we focus on that. And then generally many of these have their own sort of basis. And what we do find many times is that, budget becomes an issue, especially for ads, right? For ad space. And just the value of, like, how do you measure that ad space, right? Like, you're spending $500 to $1,000 a month or a week sometimes, right? Are you able to get that return back, right, quickly? So people have to, I think it's just more about realizing how it works. And I like to say it's a kind of a holistic approach, right? Like, you need to have everything all in one. Like, it's not just one, okay, I just do Facebook ads or Google ads and that's all I'm gonna focus on, right? You need to focus on everything together, right? Which sort of gives you more success. Google Shopping is something that's interesting you mentioned, right? So which I haven't personally seen a lot, but I've seen it as well. But I mean, I haven't seen, like, I obviously, haven't kind of focused on, I haven't seen more people kind of dwell on that area. Yeah.
And phenomenal answer. And thank you. And so, kind of back with the persona exercise, just in case somebody's out there asking, hey, what are you talking about exercise? We, jumping on, we're going to spin class, or what is this? So the persona exercise is, I'm very big on it, where it's like, it's really digging deep into who is that ideal dream client. And when I say that, going specific on, I've gone through it with a lot of manufacturers, and like, we'll go into like demographics, where they go to college, and create almost that fictitious person. And then we create the content all around it. Now, B2B and in manufacturing, they have a little bit of an advantage, where the key terms, or their keywords are super competitive, of course, but they're not as competitive as a lot of the retail side. Okay. There's still a lot of opportunity and room to grow on the B2B side. So when we say that, one trick that has worked, not I don't say trick, but one strategy that works incredibly well, like you're saying on the SEO side, is creating that content. And if there's any takeaway for anybody today, man, consistency, consistent. Right. And the trick that we've been using is, for these manufacturers, they'll do content on a weekly basis. For example, I had a wire harness manufacturer, and so they came up with Wire Harness Wednesdays. So every single Wednesday, they would come out with content based on their persona, that soulmate, and it could be an engineer at Boeing, or a new product buyer at Ford Motors, or whatever. And we tried to create content that tailored to that buyer. And then what we did is, after a number of months, we had like a whole arsenal, basically a library of content. And I picked up this great little strategy. We took a bunch of those blog posts, put them together, and we created a resource guide. So now, like, if somebody were to Google, like, for example, this manufacturer, if they Google wire harness manufacturing, they now own the Google snippet, which is that little piece of real estate at the very top. And It's a very, very competitive key term. So again, a great takeaway for everybody today is, come up with that consistent content, maybe put it together in a guide that resonates with your persona, your soulmate, that helps them as a buyer. Nobody likes to be sold, but they like to be helped to buy. And that helps capture those rankings. And then what we do is we tag team it with Google Shopping. And for those of you who might be new to Google Shopping, I've had some clients like, hey, wait a minute, they have a different perception of what it is. It's the little, on Google, when you see the product with the price. And the great thing is because like if you're selling one item and there's different names for that item, well, if they click on the text ad, that rings your cash register. When they see the picture, well, I didn't want to buy that. Well, now that saved my click. But when they do see it and they like it and like the price, the conversions go through the roof on Google Shopping. So a couple of tricks there, a couple of, I shouldn't use the word tricks, but a couple of strategies for everybody out there to consider.
No, those are really good tips for sure. Definitely. Because it comes down to how people kind of view a website and how you view a store, right? And get them to purchase online, obviously quickly. Based on this, it's interesting how you kind of bring up all this stuff, and you see along the journey that sometimes people will make mistakes, right? So I'll ask you, what are some mistakes that you wish you could have avoided and kind of learn from those?
Let's see. Let me get my list. Here's my whole notebook of no, I'm just kidding. Mistakes I made. One of my big mistakes was when social media was hitting in the 2000s. I thought it was going to niche out, and I thought you had Facebook and Twitter, and I'm like when Twitter came out, I was like, who's going to type 140 characters? That's never going to work, But I will share this. We jumped on. So I'm going to share one positive thing that we did. Then I'll get into a mistake. We jumped on YouTube immediately. Like when YouTube came out in 2006, 2007, we sat there. We're like, hey, what if we just started taking quick videos of our product? And so we just started shooting a ton of videos of our product. Then we're like, hey, what if we did a bunch of how-to videos? How to do this? How to do that? And again, anything that would be educational, helpful, resonated with our soulmate, that persona. And man, I'm telling you, those old videos are horrible. They're still on YouTube today. Hundreds of thousands of views. And what did it cost us to shoot a video? Zero. Just right. So again, another tip for everybody today, if it's not too late. YouTube has, exploded over the past 10, 15 years, whatever it's been, but great opportunity. I tried creating I thought in our little niche, we could create like a little social media site and based around our customers, and great idea, great intentions, horrible execution. And, I invested a significant amount of money and didn't have much to show for it when everything was said and done. However, when the dust settled, we had some nice ideas that came out of that disaster that I invested in. And another great tip was what we did out of that whole we tried creating the social media platform where people come on and chat and da-da-da. But what we did was we created this thing. It was almost like a Ask the Expert. It was an idea that came out of it. And we would have a thing where it was like an event type thing. We're like, hey, I'm having this event on a Saturday night in Toronto and da-da-da. What do you guys think we should do? And so we had someone on staff that would take a bunch of product and say, well, we think these lists of products would resonate or would be helpful. And it was kind of the Ask the Expert. Our conversions for those products were through the roof, astronomical. It was scalable. It just took a little bit of time for somebody to do that. But again, if somebody's like, okay, what kind of content do I create? Your customers will tell you the content they want. Just pay attention, listen to the questions, ask a lot of questions, whatever answers. Every question and answer is an opportunity for an FAQ for that soulmate or get it on the website to help that customer. So anyway, we'd be here too long if I had to list all my mistakes, but that was a big one that I made was that social media site.
Those are definitely good tips for sure. Can be applied to learn from that for sure. Based on you kind of talk about how you are in manufacturing and you went online, right? But how do you know when that was you were talking about 1995 when you went online, but how do you know when you had the right idea to go there? Like, you said you talked about necessity, but like.
Yeah. So again, it was out of desperation. But when I went online, so again, I had a wholesale business and we sold to like retail businesses, grocery chains, that type of thing. And I thought that that's who my buyer would be, my persona would be the
Mm-hmm.
40, 40 something, whatever age. And it was a 20 something consumer. And then it was another one. Then it was another one. Then it was another one. And I was like, and the great thing if this is relevant here, the great thing was the consumer was buying wholesale. So they actually were buying cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
I had a little bit better margin. People were taking out a credit card and buying, and my business was 24/7. So that's when all of a sudden, I come in on a Monday morning, so there were no smartphones. We weren't checking email on weekends. Like if you weren't at your PC, you didn't know what was going on.
Right.
I would come in on a Monday morning and there'd be a list of orders. And I'm like, man, this, then a Tuesday night, we would, our 9 to 5, we were like 7 to 4, whatever hours were, we would close. When I close, I would stick around. I'd be online. All of a sudden, an order. And so one thing that I love to preach is your e-commerce platform, your e-commerce presence, digital presence. How can you help that customer make a buying decision at Friday night at midnight without having to wait to open up the doors on Monday? So if hopefully I'm answering your question. When these, I'd come in on a Monday, these orders would come in. I'm like, these were all consumers because business buyers aren't buying on the weekends in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday night from 4 until the next morning, we have X number of orders. Like I think we're onto something here. So, and again, the moral here is how can you help the customer make a buying decision? Make your website, your e-commerce store. And you look at the examples on your website, you guys do a great job for your clients.
Thanks.
How can you help those customers make that buying decision easy, simple as possible, especially with COVID and we're social distancing and quarantining, now you don't have a choice,
Right. No, that's definitely for sure. You're 100% right. We're kind of nearing the end of our
Sure.
talk here, so I don't want to take too much of your time. But before we finish, what is one tip that you can share with us that if you implement today to have success? I know you've given a lot of tips today, which is very valuable. But
Right.
what's one tip that you think if you were to take away today that would give us success?
One tip, I'll give a shameless plug, again, my book. So stop being the best kept secret, get on e-commerce, connect with, if you're new, I don't know how to change the oil in my car. I don't know anything about my car other than I just know it takes me from A to B, connect with that expert, you hire a plumber, you hire a wedding planner, or, you hire these experts. My tip is, get in the game. You can whiteboard things all you want to, you can business plan it all you want to. E-commerce, again, with my 100-year experience, there's no greater means that's more efficient, effective to get in the market. And the market will tell you whether, usually we're talking about my mistakes and stuff, usually time will tell you whether you're a genius or a fool. And it's very rarely anything between, but e-commerce is it's inexpensive, it's effective, and get you in the game immediately. And you'll find your market. Just be consistent. So that's my message today.
That's really great tip for sure. You talked at the beginning of the call, before our call, that you have something for the viewers
Oh, yeah.
who listen. Yeah, you want
Sure.
to mention that?
Sure. If if you enjoyed this conversation, I'm being horrible, aren't I? So once again, my shameless plug. I wrote a book. It's Stop Being the Best Kept Secret, and what it goes through the whole process of creating that e-commerce presence, and has steps in there. And I talk about making that great first web impression. Instead of impression, I call it web impression. How to really attack the search engines, and then we talked about the marketplaces. So I have free copies of the book. If anybody's interested in a copy, I think you'll have it in show notes, or you can message Shahid, and I would be honored to get you a free version of that book, and that would be great. So.
Perfect. And thanks for the generous offer. That's really great. Nice of you. And again, thank you so much for taking your time. Really appreciate it. Great insight. Learning a lot. I learned a lot too about e-commerce. So that's amazing. And wish you all the best of luck as well in the future.
Hey, this was my privilege, Shahid. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. And again, you do a great job. So, as a matter of fact, we'll be working together on clients. And so, if you're looking for an e-commerce store, Shahid is definitely the guy to connect with. So thank you, everybody.
Sounds good.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.